We're getting ready to get back started again. Dennis, real quick, I want to bring you up. Um, you, how many of y'all remember last week when I talked about our parking lot? Last time we came together, last month, we were online, and I think you guys were online with us, and I held the signs up. So Dennis is over our parking lot. In fact, yes, he's our captain, and Dennis all of a sudden said, "Pastor, I I hired a professional parking lot striper to come and stripe the parking lot." So he did it on his own. I didn't even know it. In fact, when I drove up, the guy was on his little machine. He rides it and spray paints he spray painted half the parking lot. And then the other day I'm actually looking at some speed bumps. So what happened? How did you come up with that, Dennis? And why did you do that?
Well, I got a little blessing, and I kind of said, we've been waiting on it for a while. We're still working on our house, and I was like, Lord, we kind of need this, but in your time, we'll take it, And about that time, we were looking at doing striping the parking lot, and I was like, man, I wish I could help out, And about that time, we got our blessing. I was like, Lord, I think that was perfect timing. So I just paid for it and all, and we have some people that don't kind of pay attention, when they come through there, and the kids and some adults too, when they walk out, they're still full of the Spirit, and they don't watch for traffic, and traffic don't watch for them. So just trying to protect the people that we have and the people that new people we're getting is why I put the speed bumps in. Does protection of our kids is kind of my thing, especially now that I have my own. So I look forward to taking care of our kids.
Is that your parking lot out there?
Yes, sir. You gave it to me, sir.
I didn't even want to ask him how much he spent. Okay, it's thousands of dollars, and
It all belongs to God anyway. So.
Dennis, did your pastor come to your house and help you after the flood a month ago or so?
Yes. Y'all were running circles around me.
He needed to hook his plumbing up. Of course, I own a trailer park, so I've done lots of that. So I went over there, and me and Lynn, we jumped under the trailer and put that plumbing together in about 2 hours. You know what I'm saying?
On a Thursday.
Oh, before church. But anyway, the thing is we went and served a precious man that was struggling from the flood from 2016. And amazingly, God caused some money to come into his household, and he just took ownership and went and did the whole parking lot. But, that's how it works. We just love and serve one another. It's relational. And you give ownership of certain departments in your house, and you find people like Dennis. Now, look, Dennis is still dirty. He was shoveling dirt a minute ago. I texted him during our training and said, hey, Dennis, we would love to have you at our church training. And he said, when? I said, now. And he said, what'd you say? Oh, LOL. Wow. All right. So here he is.
Sure enough, it started raining, so you can't do dirt work in the rain. So I just come this way.
All right, great. And come on, could you give Dennis a great big hand? All right. Come on, Brother Seth.
And it starts with ownership, realizing that the ministry was given to all of us. Everybody has something they can contribute, something they can add, something that they have a skill set and a gifting for that God will use for his glory. So we're going through this process. We've had a big day. We've got guest cards from everybody. Listen, if you have a huge attendance and then you show up and you don't have any guest cards or you have very few, you've missed it. Because just because they came once, this is the key. We've got to get information so we can connect with them and we can build relationship. So I was saying earlier, we do it with a ticket style. We actually have everybody that comes through the door fill out a ticket, and we receive them. Then we'll also mention it during service 3 different times at the opening. Hey, guys, welcome to Compassion Action. So glad you're here. If you didn't fill out one of these cards on your way in, take a minute and fill it out now. You can drop it in the offering. We'll mention it again at the offering and then again at the end. Hey, if you hadn't filled out one of these cards, fill it out. Drop it off by one of our guest tents outside. We set up tents outside for our first-time guests. The reason we do that is we want that information. That information is everything. Then we text them, we follow up with them, we invite them back to a guest meal, and we try to get whoever invited them the first time to be the one that initiates the invite back. Here's the key for guest meal. We don't just invite the people that visited to come to guest meal. We say, hey, we would love to have you and your family, any of your friends that would come with you to come to our guest meal next week, bring them with you. So what we'll do is we'll take 5 guests and turn them into 10. Because we invite them to bring anybody they want to come, and we're going to feed them a meal. So for these 5, it'll be their second time coming through our door. For 5 more of them, it'll be their first time. And we just keep connecting. Once we get them to a guest meal, our guest meal looks like this. I'm going to be very specific with it because we did it wrong for a long time. It took us a while to figure it out. Guest meals are round tables. Here's the power with a round table. In church, we are in pews in rows. We stare at the backs of each other's heads. We want them to have conversation across the table. We don't want them just building relationship with one person speaking. We want them building relationship with everybody sitting around that table. When you come out of sin, when you come out of a lifestyle that's not healthy, and you have a life-changing experience, a relationship with Jesus Christ, the biggest thing that gets people is they go back to their old social groups, and it's not long they fall back into their sinful ways. If you can help give them new social groups, new people to hang out with, new friends, new relationships that are on the same journey, they'll encourage each other, and it becomes positive peer pressure instead of negative peer pressure. We want them to have relationships with everybody around the table. So when you come into a guest meal, you've been to one Sunday, you came to a wave, we've invited you back, you're now showed up at a guest meal. At each table, I will have one individual that is extremely relational, that is from my team. Now, it used to be my core leadership or my staff, my core leaders, my director level, one of them would take each table. But as we've gotten bigger, I've figured out it's more effective for me to have just highly relational people that know something about everything at the church, and they're just talking. I don't want this person carrying the conversation. I don't want them constantly talking about, well, our church does this, our church does that. That's not what this meal is about. This meal is about getting to know them. I want everybody at that table talking about their favorite subject, which is what? Themselves. Everybody wants to talk about me. Their job is to get them to talk about me and listen. I want them listening. I want them to know those people they eat lunch with. I want them to have a real relationship. Here's the other thing that will take place. So I've got 8 people sitting around this table. I never go more than 8. Sometimes it'll be 5. I'll have each one of these tables will be loaded up. I've got key leaders at all of them. Now, me and my staff, we serve the meal. I don't want it buffet style because I don't want them standing in line getting a buffet. I'm wasting precious time. I want them talking while they're being served. I want to build a relationship. I don't want them standing in line waiting to get food. I want it served to them. My job, I refill the drinks. Why? It gives me an opportunity to speak to every single person in the room. And I have an excuse to not stand there and talk to them too long. Yeah, hey, good to see you. And then I keep moving. I'm talking to all of them, but their key relationship is not with me at this point because they're not going to have access to me. The truth is I don't have time during the week to meet with all the people that attend my church. I don't know all their names. I don't need to. Somebody on my team knows their names. Somebody has a relationship with them, so it's little churches within the church. Pass down everything. This individual right here is extremely relational. Their job is to keep everybody talking, to make sure everybody is engaged. And then if you have somebody in one of these places that says, I love to sing, or hey, I play the keys, or hey, I'm a school teacher. They are listening in to what they enjoy and what their skill sets are. My objective is not just for them to build relationships. My objective is to give them all a job. Every woman needs a friend. Every man needs a job. And I will give them a job before I even know if they're saved. I'm not trying to check their salvation status. I just want to know if they're willing to serve. As they're doing that, at the end of this meal, when this meal is wrapping up, every single one of them will have a card laying at their place that was under their plate. And that card is an interest card. And they flip it over, and it'll be the ministries or areas they can serve in my church. And I'm going to ask them to write their 2 favorite ones, a 1 beside their favorite, a 2 beside their second favorite. Why do I get 2 options? Because somebody will inevitably sit down and say, ooh, I want to be on the worship team. I want to sing. Baby, you don't need to sing. Sweetie, you can't sing. You can't carry a tune in a bucket. And I appreciate your willingness to sing. I don't need to put you on stage. I need to know your second option. I'm trying to help my worship pastor out by having 2 options. Y'all think that's funny when you get a church and people start coming through your door and everybody wants to sing and they can't sing? Look, you can have somebody off tune when it's 35 people. People overlook it. When you got 800 folks in a room and somebody's way off key, you just killed the ability for God to move in that room because everybody's holding their ears has shifted. I am intentional in everything. So I want 2 options. So when somebody says, I want to be on the worship team, we actually, at our size now, if you want to be on our worship team, you have to sing a fast song and a slow song. If you're a vocalist, if you're a musician, you got to play both. You send them into our lead worship pastor. He listens to them. Then he sets up and schedules for you to come in and set through some practices. Why? Because we're using in-ears. We got click tracks. It takes some skill set to do it. If somebody signs up for my parking lot, more than likely I can teach them how to be great in the parking lot. Somebody signs up to be on a worship team, that's a completely different skill set. So I want to make sure I get options from everybody so I can move them into a backup role. So my worship pastor can say, hey, at this point in time, we don't have an opening for somebody with your skill set or lack thereof, so we're going to push you into your second option for a season. You don't want to crush them, but you want to be honest with them, and you move them. We're saving our worship pastor headaches, our worship director. But that's what they're doing, and we're going to get an interest card from every single person sitting around the table. Every single one of them. I want an interest card. It doesn't mean they're committing to be a part of that team. It means they're interested in it. Then I'm going to get somebody from that team to contact them and talk through the details. And I don't want them committing that day because they may not know the details. I don't want them committing to something they don't understand. And I also don't do open-ended commitments. Every one of our commitments is for 1 year. Every year we re-sign up all our volunteers. Here's why. Because if a volunteer feels like they're in a commitment that never has an ending, they'll quit on you faster. They'll just quit. They'll quit showing up. They'll stop somewhere along the way. If they know, hey, man, if I can hang in there 2 more months, I'll get through this year, then I can redetermine if I sign up. It makes them more committed. That's just experience, and that's not from me. That's from Conrad. Yes, sir.
Church's biggest fault, running their racehorses to death.
Kill them. And the truth is we've got 2 or 3 racehorses that we're scared of. We got 3 or 4 plow horses that we make pull everything. If everybody pulled a load according to their giftings, it's the parable of the talents. Not everybody's going to be a thoroughbred, but if you can move something somewhere, just do something. The objective for us is as a pastor, the objective for me with every individual that walks through my church is to find the place that they're operating in their giftings, a fulfilled life. It doesn't mean all of them are going to be stars. It doesn't mean all of them are going to be great. Some of them may spend every single week for years straightening chairs in the sanctuary. But the fact that they're doing it means somebody else doesn't have to, and somebody else can operate in their gifting. Everybody has a role to play. Tasha started off at my church, opening the front door. Now Tasha is my connections director. She has a huge team underneath her. She is also now the national champion for all the Compassion networks. She trains all the new connections directors in our network. Well, where did she start? 2 years ago, she was standing on the side of 58 in Axton, Virginia, waving at cars. You never know the potential that's within somebody. You never know. But you got to give them somewhere to get started. And then you see what God develops in them as they start using their gifts for God and multiplying them. Sometimes it starts off by striping a parking lot. You never know where it stops. Tasha was on, her husband was drafted onto her team, Scott. He stood by the road and flipped the sign. He was my wow guy. You know what Scott is now? He's my recovery pastor at my Hope Center Ministries. But it started out on the side of 58 flipping a sign, yelling hey to people. Now he spends 50 hours a week ministering to people who are overcoming addictions. never know what's within them, but you got to get them on the team. Connections meal is the process through which we take strangers and turn them into family. Share a meal together. Why? Jesus did it. Share a meal. Get to know each other, build relationships, find them a spot, a place to belong. When somebody has a place to belong, they become much more committed in their attendance. They become much more committed in their giving, but it's not about their attendance and their giving. They become much more committed in their relationship with Jesus Christ because it's a constant connection. It's a constant pull. They also invite people to church. Why? Because it's their church. I serve there. They have a vested interest in the church. As a pastor, often I felt like I was doing church so people could come watch it. It was a consumer mentality. Not what we were called to do. We were called to equip the saints for the doing of the ministry. This is equipping them by finding their roles. Saved, freed, restored, fulfilled. We're trying to find a fulfilled life for every one of them. Guest meal takes place there. If you have a huge wave, you'll add another guest meal. The sermon series that you're going through right here is extremely relational. So you're preaching evangelistic for the 4 weeks coming in, 4 weeks coming out are relational building sermon series. Like we're in the middle of one now coming out of our fall wave. It's called Simple. So it was Simple Faith, Simple Hope, Simple Talk, which deals with prayer, and then Simple Life, which will be this week. Because you've got a lot of non-believers that have just started becoming a part of your church, now you got to start teaching them the basics of what it looks like to walk with Christ. Relationship building sermon series. The other thing that's taking place behind the scenes is there are phone calls that are taking place. There are baptisms. If someone makes a profession of faith, the quicker you can get them to a point of baptism, the better. Because now there's a public accountability. It's the reason Christ encourages it. It's publicly professing it, and it also is accountability for them. Hey, I just stood up in front of all my friends and everybody and declared who I am. I can't do that. It helps them walk in their growth. Here's the other thing baptisms do. They draw guests. If somebody's going to get baptized in our church, they don't just show up and get baptized. We get 10 names of their closest family and friends and send them personal invites. The church sends invites. We want them invited, and afterwards we will have a little reception, maybe some donuts for all the people that got baptized, just to take some pictures with the pastor so they feel important, give them their certificates, and let them know it's a big deal. Be amazed how many people started attending our church because somebody they loved or cared about got baptized. We do the exact same things with child dedications. We're not just going to dedicate your child. Give us friends and family. We'll send them personal invites. It's always personal invites. Baptisms take place those 4 weeks after. This is the connection run. Now, how do we know if the whole wave was successful? We doubled our attendance on the day of the wave. We doubled our guest cards. Now we're 4 weeks afterwards. The wave will know, look, you're not going to keep all of those people. You're just not. Statistics are against you. Here's the number we're looking for. We want to retain 30% of total guest flow. I want to set you up with realistic goals. But there's also a way to judge it and gauge it all the way through. For this Christmas wave that's coming up, if you get to the day of the wave and you double your attendance, you know you did a good job. If you didn't double your attendance, you can start looking back and say, okay, where did we not get this? What did we miss? What piece did we not fully engage? So now you got a scorecard. I fully believe if you don't have a scoreboard, you never know if you're winning. People get tired of playing. Anybody ever watch little kids play sports that they no longer keep score? Kids quit caring. I know it. All my kids played sports. When they were in the young leagues, they kept score on the sideline in the dirt. Why? They want to know if they're winning. Your church wants to know if it's winning. The way you keep score is the fact that here's our scoreboard. We doubled our attendance the day of. We got guest cards from every single guest that came in. Then out of those, we got them back to guest meal. Out of guest meal, we were able to retain 30% of all of our guests. Means we're winning. Take a church of 100 people. They go through a wave. They doubled on the day of, which means they had 100 guests. They retained 30%. That means they're now a church of 130 coming out the backside. Okay, that's cool. Do that again. What's 30% of 130? With 260 would be the double the day of. Then if we keep 30% of that guest flow, which would be 30% of 130, 166. Now do 30% of that again. Do what? 48. So you're looking at 214. 214. How many of y'all would take a growth from a church of 100 to 214 in 1 year? Absolutely we would. That's 114 souls that are going to spend eternity in heaven instead of hell. Yep. All right. Okay, so you got 100 people that attend your church, regular attendance. The day of the wave, you did a good job, so you doubled your attendance. So that day you had 200 people come in, which means you had 100 guests. Well, out of that 100 guests, you walked them through the guest meal, you went through this whole process, and you retained 30%, which would be 30 people. So that puts your average attendance at 130 4 weeks out. And then after you go with 130 into your next wave, which would be Easter, and you would come out 166. And then you would go into your next fall wave, and you would come out 214.
All right, hang tight.
I think it's a wonderful work there. But how these peoples are integrated in the church service? Because there's a lot of people coming to the church.
Right.
How these people are integrated in church service?
All right. So at this meal, we got interest cards from them, right? So that 30% of people that are still attending, we know exactly what they're interested in. They gave us 2 ministries they want to be a part of. So now those cards go from this thing to the directors of those ministries. I have 4 directors at my church. I have connections, worship, kids, and students. Students are my teenagers. Those are my 4 directors. Those 4 directors, these cards are divided up after guest meals, and everybody who has interest in those areas, those cards go to them. They go to their number 1. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question.
All right.
I'm going to let you get it. Ask it again so it's on video.
Do you only do the guest meals after a wave?
No, ma'am. I do guest meals one Sunday a month every month because I have guests that come in between. But after a wave, they're huge. So my guest meals after this one, they were between 50 and 75 people, and we had to do them for multiple weeks after to get all the guests through. Now, most of the time in a monthly guest meal, we started off our first guest meal had 3 people because we were a small church. You know, we were a church of 55 people by that point. And then as we kept growing, then it got to 10 people, then 12. As we started learning to get them to bring and invite their friends and family to come with them to the meal. And we even did this. We would say, look, whoever invited you to church, bring them with you to the guest meal so they have somebody they're comfortable with sitting with them. Oh. And so you start building. Now, once you start getting bigger and more and more people, you have to say, hey, don't bring nobody else don't bring them to the guest meal with you. Don't bring whoever invited you. I'm just kidding. We bring everybody we can get in that room. We will have it packed. And you don't want the room so full of people that there's no relationship, so you limit your table size and you keep adding tables. Don't keep making bigger and bigger tables. Your table needs to be limited about 8 to 10 people max. We try to stay 8 and under because if not, you'll lose that personal relationship, and it's all about the relationship.
Hey, Seth, let me just tell you, with our guest meals, a lot of times we've had people that just in the service just show up. Yeah. And how do you address that?
Here's how we do that. At the end of, if we have a service that we're going to have a guest meal after, we invite all the guests to stay. If this is your first time here and you want to stay, we have a guest meal. We'd love for you to come. So we will overrun it. That's why we did frozen pizzas, because we could just keep heating them up.
But we have people that just come
like folks that are in the church.
Yeah. How do you address them?
We address it very clearly.
Yeah.
If this is your first time, you've never attended a guest meal, this meal is for you. We would genuinely tell people at the door, man, you know this. Man, you've been here at the last 4 guest meals. Come on. And we'll have a real conversation. And the reason is not because I don't want to feed them. Man, I'll give them food. The reason is I don't want 5 people sitting at this table that have been in my church for 8 months. Because I want the relationship to be with the new folks. I'll tell them point blank. But we are very clear with that. And what we also have is that we're in an old school. So we've got a cafeteria. And I've got two ladies standing right here, and they're giving name tags to everybody that comes in. And so the conversation is, so how long have you been attending Compassion Axton? Oh, this is my first Sunday. This is my third Sunday. They're coming in. Oh, I've been here 6-8 months. How many times you been to guest meal? Oh, this is my fourth one. You ain't coming to guest meal today. I love you. You ain't coming today. Bless you. Dude, if you're hungry, I will get you some food. You ain't coming to guest meal today. And if you want to come to all our guest meals, great. I'll put you on the team that serves the guest meals, and you can help.
There you go.
Because I've got a whole team that cooks, prepares, cleans up. Man, if you want to come and be a part, let's get you on a team. And we'll make that conversation at the door, too.
Seth.
Hey, you want to stay today? Great. You can be a part of the cleanup team.
I missed something because you said the first time you want 30%, then a second time visitor you retain 70%.
You retain 30% of people that have come one time. If you can get them to come the second time, you get 70%.
70%, but does that still, and the only reason why I'm asking is not because of numbers, but for accountability.
Right.
But at that point, wouldn't you be talking about 20% retention and not 30?
Let me be very clear. I want 30% of all the people that attend my guest meal to be connected to my church, which means they have a first serve or their first time being a part of a group. Now, I don't do life groups at my church. All of my groups are ministry groups. I don't have a single group that gets together that doesn't serve. So that's where that 30% comes from. This is just a statistic about every single person that walks through your door constantly. This is just a church statistic that comes from Charisma Magazine, that if people attend your church one time, there's a 30% chance they'll come back. If they come 2 times, there's a 70% chance they'll come back. So, yes, there's a 70% chance they'll come back, but this is the 30% that will be actually serving on my teams in ministry. Why? Because they ain't leaving.
Gotcha.
They're in. They are so committed. They're a part of my team. So that's a 30% overall growth out of my total guest flow. It's what I'm looking for. This statistic is completely separate. This is just talking about if they attend twice, the odds go up to 70%. They'll keep coming. So this is my in-house statistic of actually the number I can prove. This is from Charisma Magazine about just an overall church-wide statistic. Here's the thing. This number is for an average church that may have 15 to 20 guests a year. I have 35 guests a weekend. So my 30% is a whole lot bigger than their 70 because my guest flow is through the roof. Why? Because I run waves. My guest flow is off the charts. And of waves, when I have waves, that Sunday when I had 2369, which was for my fall wave 3 weeks ago, when all those people were at my church, out of those, the first time through the building, I think it was 485. 485 of them is the first time they'd ever walked in my doors. So that's my number for my first-time guest. Now, will I connect some of those other people? Yes. But those are the ones I'm really trying to get back for that second attend. Some of the other ones are just seasonal. They're going to come to big events. A lot of those may attend other churches in the community. They just came that week because we were having something. That's not really my focus. I'm focusing on unchurched, lost, disconnected people. I mean, if they swap from the Methodist church and start coming to mine, but they already knew Jesus, I love them. They're more than happy to be a part, not who I'm fishing for. I'm fishing for the lost. Yes, sir. They're on a team. So they're on a team. Once they're on a team, say they're on my parking lot team. My parking lot team, the way it would work at a small to medium-sized church is you got a guy who's in charge of the whole parking lot. Well, he's making sure his team's showing up on Sunday. He makes sure they know what they're supposed to do. He's communicating. They actually become almost like a cell group. And he does discipleship with them. He does a little devotion with them every week. They do a prayer huddle beforehand. That's how you keep them connected. The connection is in the job and in the responsibility that then has relationship. Every woman wants a friend. Every man wants a job. That's a common theme that you get through business. Everybody wants a place to belong. When you start becoming a part of a team, now you have a job and a responsibility, but those people are also your relationships. So you've connected them. Happens very quickly. I'll give you a quick story. Had a couple that started attending our church in Axton, Virginia. They got tied in through a wave, went to a guest meal. They signed up. He signed up to be on the parking lot team. She signed up to be on Connections. I still don't know their names, to be honest with you. His job moved. He had to move to upstate New York. Well, when he left, he had been serving on the parking lot team 4 weeks. The parking lot team, the guys he served with, the people he served with every week, they threw a little going away party, had a cake for him, took pictures. They moved to upstate New York. They come home once a month to visit family, and when they come home, they serve at my church. They still show up on Sunday. They don't even live there anymore, but they show up on the Sunday they're in town. That week, they're serving on our teams. Why? Because it's their relationships. That's their friends. That's their core group. Nobody in our church knew them 6 weeks before that because they had moved into town for a job. It wasn't a person that was already connected to the congregation. But now they became so connected so quickly that they had a going away party for them. They come in every time they're in town. They come visit. They make sure they're at church, and they want to serve. It's a culture of serving. People stay connected with folks they like, and if they have things in common. Yes, sir.
The most important thing of the whole thing is politeness.
It's greeting people. You're absolutely right. It's
The
relationships.
most important thing of it all.
How can you say you love God whom you've never seen if you don't love your brother who you have seen?
Exactly.
Love people.
You got
It's
to give
all
them
about
your
loving
heart
people.
when you first see them.
Look, I've never met you before, but I will guarantee you could come to my church and you would be there next week and you would be on one of my teams and everybody would know you and love you within.
Sure would the way I talk.
Hey, and they're going to talk to you, and all of a sudden now you're going to fit in, you're going to be a part and belong. Why? Because it's who you are.
Yes, sir.
It's the love of Christ that radiates from you, man. I can't be quiet and be rude to you, man. God died for you. Jesus Christ hung on a cross and died for you, and I'm going to be rude to you?
You can't do it.
When you're walking in his house, there is no way.
I can't stand to see somebody sitting in the audience before church started, and they've got their head down. I know something's wrong. I'm going to talk to them.
And you will grow the church.
Yes, sir.
Church doesn't grow from the pastor. I don't grow my church. Truth is, I took 7 weeks off in June, and the church was bigger when I got back than it was when I left. That'll do a whole lot for your ego. They better off, truly. Why? Because what grows my church is my parking lot, my lobby, the way people are treated, the way they're loved. Yes. The preaching, my job is to equip the people for the ministry. It means they've been equipped and they're doing the ministry because it grew without me being there. I don't have to be there every week.
And he does a great job at that.
Yes, he does. You know why? Because he loves reckless. Reckless love is contagious. But we've got to get more people through our doors so they can experience that love. It's who God is. God is love. That's what ought to radiate. We've got to get more of them there so they can experience it, so they can have that encounter. Now we know how we're getting them connected. We know what the process is. We know what we're shooting for. 30% of all guests tied in and connected. When this is over, so this 4 weeks in, day of the event, 4 weeks out. Front of the wave, back of the wave. All of that's taking place. The church has grown 30%. We even walked through what those numbers look like. You more than double in a year. You know what happens the next year? 30%, that chunk keeps getting bigger and bigger. So it's exponential growth. It's multiplied growth. It seems too simple, doesn't it? Yes, sir.
Hup. When you get done talking about the 3 big waves, can you
Yeah.
talk about some of the off-season stuff?
I will. I'll
What
talk
we'll
through
do.
some of it, but just know it all works the same way.
Okay.
But you'll have a little less lead in and lead out on a smaller wave. But it works the exact same way.
Hey, Seth, just to kind of give y'all an update of where we're at and what we're doing, we'll be eating at 12 o'clock, and there's a big clock back there.
I got you. Perfect.
Please. I opened the Bible the first time when I was 20 years old.
Yes, sir.
I don't open the Bible before 20 years old. I ask a question. Do they study the word together during the week?
This right here is not about the full options or functions of the church. This is just church growth model. It's like there are things that will be going on in your church outside of this. This is just the church growth model. So like at my campus, we did Wednesday night Bible study where everybody ate and we dug into the depths of the scripture. But that didn't have anything to do with bringing in guests and connecting them to the body. You see what I'm saying? So all I'm focusing on is growth right here with the waves. People growing is going to come through the word, what the pastor's going to be preaching on Sunday morning. It's going to come through all kinds of different ministry elements that you've got going on during the week. The thing that does happen in this is as they go into ministry groups, as they connect to serve, there is discipleship that takes place in those groups. It's not the only thing we do, but it's a part of what we do. Does that make sense? So I'm not covering, okay, this is the only thing you're doing at your church. I'm just saying this is how you drive attendance and growth so you can reach more lost. It's all this is to the point where they have an encounter with Christ. And discipleship, I'm going to give it to you, honestly, from my perspective, becomes a whole lot more from the doing and serving beside somebody than it does from the sitting in a classroom. You need both, but I think it's caught, not taught. Jesus didn't say, hey, sit and listen to me to his disciples. He said, hey, follow me. Walk where I walk, do what I do, see how I love, see how I serve. And that's the biggest thing that happens through this model. So we've got all these pieces taking place, 3 major waves a year. We're going to grow. Look, if we don't do any smaller waves, if we don't do anything else, we're doubling in a year.
All right, Seth, let me just ask you a question.
Absolutely.
Then, because this is what goes through the minds of spiritual people.
Yes, sir.
You said that they come in one week and the next week they're at the door serving.
Yes.
You said that they're not even saved.
Not all the time.
Brother, how could they not be saved and still serving in the church? They love to be doing something crazy when they leave. You know, unsaved people are sinners.
You're exactly right.
So
now, I'm not putting them on the stage teaching the lesson. Would they be greeting in my parking lot? Yeah. Here's where I come from that. Jesus says to Peter, follow me. Has Peter had a salvation experience at that point?
No, he hadn't.
But he started being identified with Christ and being seen with Christ. He starts being in the room with Christ. Matter of fact, Jesus hung out with sinners so much they accused him of it.
One,
they called him one.
Yeah.
And he said, who did I come for?
You know when Peter really had an experience spiritually is when the boat was so full of fish.
Yep. And how long had he been following Christ at that point?
Yeah.
He had already been involved and identified with Christ. He was already helping Christ in the ministry of reaching others before he had his own salvation experience.
Imagine that.
All we're doing is taking people who say, man, I need something else. I had a conversation. I had a guy in my center, our drug and alcohol rehab center, our Hope Center. His name is Chris. Chris was a Crip from L.A., and he was a set leader. If you know anything about the gangs, that's a position of a little bit of authority. And I said, okay, tell me something, Chris. How did y'all recruit? And he said, we looked for kids who needed a place to belong and a place to feel important. He said, all I was looking for was a guy who was isolated, needed some family, and I could draw him in. I said, dude, that's exactly what the church needs to do is look for people who need a place to belong and to feel important and feel like family. And we can go get people that the enemy's been getting for years.
Yes.
They ought to be ours.
I have because I don't know about the word of Jesus before I'm a Christian. I have how many people stay in the church in the statistic after 1 year, because you have the statistic and before in after how many people stay after 1 year in the church. Because if you had a relationship, but the word is very, very important for these
Absolutely. People. Look, the relationship just leads to the moment when they have the word. Well, I'll put it to you like this. 2 years ago, I had 50. Now, I average this. Right now, this is my current average. I got up to over 800 in May, but after the summer, I'm sitting right here. Now, I'm getting ready to go past that. We're going to change that by the end of the year. The end of the year, we expect to be running over 1,000, which means a lot of them are sticking. They're staying. Why are they staying? Because they're being loved reckless and they're having encounters with Jesus Christ that's changing their life. Look, a service at Compassion Axton is spirit-filled. The power of God is in the room. There are people on their face before God. There's a move. Worship's taking place this Sunday, and I'm sitting right there on that corner. I'm worshiping. Next thing I know, I open my eyes, and the altar's full. Well, I didn't call them to the altar. I didn't tell them to come. Who did? God did. And who's up there? The same people that were serving in my parking lot that didn't have a salvation experience when I started giving them a job, but they got one now. They've had an encounter with Jesus Christ, and they've seen something different than they've ever seen before. But unless they're around it long enough to figure out what it is, they don't ever get it. They don't ever have that moment. They can't trust how much God loves them unless they see how much you love them. Why? Because I'm the hands and feet of Christ. I am his representative in this moment. If I can't love them reckless, how will they ever believe a God who they've never seen loves them? So it's a place where you belong here. You are family. We're in this thing together. And I don't care if you showed up high on heroin Sunday. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to love you just like you walked in. I don't care if you walked in gay. It doesn't matter. I love you just like you walk in. My job's not to clean you or fix you. God does that. I love you reckless. And when we love people reckless and accept them how they are, God changes them. Not only that, he changes us. I'm a different man now than I was 2 years ago. It's moving at all. But it comes from having this idea. Here, I had a guy say this. I was in Pennsylvania working with a church, and I go in, and it's an older fellow who'd been a part of that congregation for years, and it was a very charismatic congregation. And he said, I feel like the first part of our ministry here was we were at the wedding feast, and we were inviting everybody in, and everybody came up with excuses. He said, but now I believe we're in the highways and hedges days where we got to go out and compel people to come in, and they ain't going to look like church folks. They ain't going to look like we expect them to. That's my kind of ministry. Let's go find the people nobody else wants. Let's love them.
I feel the Holy Ghost.
I felt him a little bit.
How many of y'all
myself.
feel the Holy Ghost? Jesus. How many of you literally got some chills? Literally. Literally.
If God,
Reckless love
if God can
gives
take
you
a,
chills.
If God can take a broken mess like me and give me an opportunity to go all around the place talking about how to reach the lost, he can use anybody for anything. I know who I am. I know what I am on my own. And it's only him that makes me different. Why would I expect anybody else to be something I was not?
Yes.
So you just love them reckless and watch what God can do.
Come on.
This is just a tool to reach the lost. That's all it is. A strategy to go get them. I call this the invasion plan. How to go invade the darkness.
Come on.
Everybody kind of understand the concept, what we're working to. Look, as we walk through these classes over the next year, we'll reiterate this over and over again, and you'll pick out new and more details. I still learn new stuff when I'm teaching it or when I hear somebody else go through, and I'm like, ooh, there's a little nuance. There's a little twist. We could actually reach more people. The thing about when you invite people to a guest meal, asking them to bring their friends and family, that was a guy in Sykeston, Missouri named Frank. Frank said, hey, we got huge guest meals because we did this. And everybody's like, ooh, that works. And then everybody started doing it. You guys here in this room will figure out something to make guest meals better or to make this process better, and you'll share it. And I'm like, hey, that works. Let's share it with everybody. And it'll start being taught everywhere we go because we're in this thing together. It's not me giving you stuff. We'll give each other stuff, and we'll be better together than we ever will be alone.
That's right.
So teaching concepts. And it's not new concepts. It's just it's putting them all together collective, linearly. Those are your three main waves. We talked about some smaller waves. We got 30 minutes until lunch, so I'm going to do a couple of smaller waves, some ideas on it, and then we'll get into the next concept after lunch. What would be a mini wave that you guys can think of, something that would naturally draw people to church for a day? Somebody mentioned it in here earlier. Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a good one. Let's talk about being strategic with Mother's Day. So we got a Mother's Day mini wave. So on Mother's Day, it's a mini wave, so you're not going to have the whole church engaged in it as much as you'll have certain dynamics. So for Mother's Day, what's one of the things you're like, for Mother's Day, they've got to be involved? What one area of your church has to be involved for Mother's Day? Children. You want the children on stage. You want the men serving. Doesn't that make every woman smile? What else might we do? We may have some special music. We may do a song or something that's a little different. So we're going to have worship is involved. One of the things, one idea I've heard is muffins with mom. So before service, they had muffins so the mom could come in with her family and they could sit and they could eat a muffin together. Just a time to sit down before service, and they would come in early. Those things work for a couple of reasons. One is people will come together because there's something special. Ooh, muffins with mom. Hey, I can sit down with my mom. Mothers in your congregation will ask their kids to come have a muffin with them. Hard to tell mama no when it's breakfast. But also sometimes the kids in the congregation will ask a mom who doesn't go to church to come with them. So you'll get that dynamic. The other thing is you'll have relationships start being built between moms who don't really know each other, but they encounter each other at that muffins with mom, and they start building relationships, connecting within the congregation. So you've got those pieces going. So so we're definitely going to have the children's area involved. We're going to have worship involved, and we're going to focus on some men serving. They're going to be involved in it. Here's one of the other things I would do is I would have my children, not just on stage, I would have them making a gift. Can we buy everybody a carnation and hand it to them when they leave? Yes. Does that have near the impact as a handmade gift a child made? No. Mama will hang on to something that baby made. It'll stick on the refrigerator. It'll sit somewhere in the house. She'll sit on her desk at work. That thing will be around forever. That carnation will be dead before lunch because the kid will beat somebody with it. or either the mom will beat the kid with it. I have seen that actually happen. Mama used that thing for a switch before they even got to the car. It's strategic. And we're not just going to build it the day of, even though it may be a project you could do in one day. So the kids that are there for just this one Sunday can still have something made for their mom. But you'll space it out over a couple of weeks so it builds anticipation. Why? Because the kid's going to be talking about it. You want to guarantee the kid talks about it? Tell them to keep it a secret. Don't tell your mom we're going to make her a gift for Mother's Day. It'll be a surprise. She'll love it. Mama, I can't tell you, but I'm making you something. Conversation goes out. You want them talking it up. You want to advertise the fact you got muffins with mom or you got some event, something special before or after. The smaller your church is, the more stuff you do collectively. So if your church is under a certain size, you may have a meal right after service for all the moms and the men serve it. Once you get to a certain size, you can't do that anymore, so things have to start dividing out. You just don't have space. So you can do a lot of events there either before service or after. We do muffins with mom because we have 3 services. We can provide muffins. They can come in early while the other service is going on and eat muffins and then go to the next. So it was easier for us to do before. Other people do after. They'll do a meal. Whatever it is, it's got to be a special moment. And look, do me a favor. Don't let the kids just run up and give their moms what they made them in the lobby afterwards. Bring all the kids to the stage and then let them walk and present their mom with a gift. Mamas will be crying everywhere. It'll be the greatest day they had at church. Have a photo booth set up outside that says Mother's Day with the name of your church and the date. And they get to take a picture with their kids because that's going all over social media, and they can hold up whatever their little baby made them. Don't miss maximizing those opportunities. Why? Because somebody else in your community is dying and going to hell that's going to see a picture and it's going to get them in church. It's not just about getting them in your building. It's about getting them to Jesus Christ. We just got to figure out as many roads as possible to get them there. There's a rule in marketing called 7 touches. All big corporations follow this rule of marketing. People have to see the name of your church 7 times before they start identifying it instantly. They have to start seeing it. It's the rule of 7 touches. So if you can put your name and logo on everything that goes out on social media, on every photo that's taken in your building, any of that stuff, it starts generating in the community. Oh, that's the community's church because everybody identifies it. And then when they're going to go to church, it's going to be to your church. And here's what I want to ask. Do you believe your church preaches the gospel of Jesus Christ? Do you believe it's a place where people can be saved and lives can be changed? Then why would you not do everything in your power to get people there? Be strategic with that and be creative. Come up with stuff you've never seen or you think, wow, it's not expensive. It's just one is it's planning. You can't come up with this the day of or 2 days before and think you're going to have a great day. It's got to be planned out. We lay out our calendar for a whole year, every event, everything on the church calendar for a year so we can be strategic. And I don't put a lot of events close together because it'll cheapen all of them. I also cut a lot of stuff off of my church calendar. We used to have women's ministry. We don't have a women's ministry. Our women minister to the lost and hurt and broken women in our community, and they do that through different avenues. And that's not a negative. I think you do fewer things and do them better. Chick-fil-A. Y'all have Chick-fil-A's around here? Chick-fil-A, great chicken sandwich. They serve hamburgers. What do they have? Chicken. What else you want? Nothing, just chicken. Have y'all ever seen a Chick-fil-A that wasn't packed out? Nope. Chick-fil-A isn't open on Sundays. Why aren't they open on Sundays? Why? Because they have values. Their values are more important than the money. You know the most profitable per chain restaurant in America? Chick-fil-A. Why? Because they've understood how to do one thing and do it well. And how do they always do it? With a smile. My pleasure. It's about customer service as much as it is the chicken. Your church better be the same way. Smile, be good to people. Do fewer things, do them better. Don't bend to everybody's wants and wishes in your congregation. I have people in my congregation want me to do 10,000 different ministries. And the people that always want us to start a new ministry are the ones that are doing absolutely nothing. If God laid it on your heart, feel free to start it. He didn't lay it on mine. And it's not being mean. It's about the fact that I have a mission to reach the lost. Here's how I'm reaching the lost. I'm not to entertain or babysit the saints. Do I want you to grow? Yes, I want you to grow by serving others. It's how Jesus' disciples grew. He got them serving. With Mother's Day, We are intentionally serving the mothers. And my job is not to make the moms that attend your church every week happy. Our job, our objective is to get as many unchurched moms as possible in our doors. So how are we going to do it? How are you going to do it? How are you going to get unchurched mothers in your doors? Let's be creative. Give me some ideas. Kids will help. If their kids are already coming, yes. Family portraits. That's a great idea. We actually pulled that. You show up on Mother's Day, we'll do a free family portrait for you. Bring your family. Here we go. And you think, well, that's expensive. It is. What we did is we actually had a professional photographer set up and take the photo. We didn't print them for you. We gave you the link where you could go to Walmart and get it printed. You could pay for it yourself, but it already done, high quality. Didn't cost us a dime. Put the link with it. Here's what else they get with that link. They get a list of the ministries going on and all the things we do at our church and how much we love them, and it comes with a verse of scripture. They hit the link. There it pops up. Now they can go get their photo. They can even get a photo frame when it prints out. It prints out Mother's Day, Compassion, Axton, 2018. It's all on it. And that way they can put it and share it on their social media page, and it goes everywhere. We did that for Mother's Day. We did it for Grandparents' Day. We also would do it with funny props. So you could have one serious family photo, and then you could have one funny one. Why? Because that will get shared 10 times more. It's just being creative. You're exactly right. And you offer that to your community. Man, you advertise that. Man, show up on Mother's Day. We'll take a free family photo, professional photographer of you and your family. Free on us. Come get it. Come see it. Here it is. Here's your link. Go get it. I mean, they can get them for $1.50 printed at Walmart, but we're taking care of the setting fees are $50 a person for a family photo. But we got a photographer who said, you know what, I'll do it all day. Set up and snap pictures. And we had a nice backdrop. Looked great. Did the same thing for Easter with the Easter Bunny. Same thing for Christmas with Santa Claus. We had the pictures. They got them for free. What did it do? Brought unchurched people in through our doors. Everybody's going to get a picture with Santa Claus with their little kids or a picture with the Easter Bunny. Now you can get it at church, and you can also get the gospel. Plus, we're free. It's free. Love the idea. What other thing can we do to reach lost moms for Mother's Day? To get them in our doors? What incentive or what could we use to try to get them to come? The mom who shows up, brings the most kids, we'll give them a free gift card to Outback Steakhouse. The mom who brings the most mothers with her, we'll give her a gift. Anything you can do to get them to bring unchurched people to your church. The mom who brings most of her kids in, the mom who has the most kids, any of those kind of things that you get creative with to try to get them there. The photos has worked the best for us. So you had the best idea off the jump. Yes, ma'am. Take the morning off, show up, we've got breakfast for you and the kids. And we'll make them eat in another room so you don't have to hear them. Love it. Love it. We also did, for Valentine's Day, that's another kind of idea. We did free babysitting service for our community. You didn't have to go to our church. But what it did is it built relationships and started drawing people in. Anything where you are giving to people and you're trying to draw the unchurched in, that's what we're looking for. We're fishing, intentionally fishing. For Mother's Day, they're building a gift for their mom leading up to it. The day of Mother's Day, it's going to be presented to her from the front of the church. What will happen is the kids would all come in. They would lay all their gifts along one little bench. They would get up front. They would sing. They'd do this song. Then they would go down and get the gifts and go present it to their mom right there in front of everybody. And then we would have some kids come back in, and for all the mothers who don't have children, all the women in the room that don't have kids, we would give them a gift. And we would talk about the fact that every mom has a role as a mother. Every woman has a role as a mother in somebody's life. And we would talk that through because you've got women in your church who maybe are barren or they've lost a child, or we make sure every woman knows her value that day. And the sermon is going to be about one of the strong women of the Bible and the impact and influence she had. Then we'll do another hook. You'll set a hook for the next day. You'll set a hook for the next week. Always, after a wave or a mini wave, the next week is going to be a hook. So the pastor will have a heartfelt moment, like Mother's Day. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to talk about the value of moms, of women pouring into other people's lives. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about it from about 4 different perspectives, 4 different angles. But then we're going to lead up to the sermon series. Don't miss the next sermon series starting next week. and it'll make sure it's attractive and it's one that's intriguing that draws people in. Pull them back in, and our kids will have something special the next week, because this week they're all involved in being a part of Mother's Day. The next week there'll be a kids event. Because why? Because mamas came on Mother's Day, brought all their kids with them. Let's make sure all the kids want to come back the following week. Intentional. And don't get discouraged when the growth is in 2s and 3s in the beginning, because it will be. After lunch, we're going to talk about team building, because this is a whole lot to pull off if you're in a place where you're currently running single-led ministry, where it's you and your spouse are pulling a lot of the weight. After lunch, we're going to actually dig into teams, and we're going to go through how to build a team, how to put a team together. And I'm going to talk about start small, dig deep, grow big. We're going to talk about putting in roots. I'm going to give you a little of my story. We started with 14 people and how we started digging from there. But I'm going to give you what was given to me about how to build teams and how to build them effectively and with a strategy. So it's not just throwing people in spots, but having an intentional place you're putting them that fits their giftings and their skill sets so they can maximize their potential. Anybody have any questions on waves or mini waves? Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So, how early should your parking lot greeters be in the parking lot, and how late should they stay in the parking lot?
That's a good question. My parking lot greeters are in my parking lot by 7 a.m. Our first service is at 8:30. Is that a little extensive? Yes. Normally about 40 minutes before service, and then I always have them for 20 minutes after service.
How long do they stay out after service has started?
After service has started, 10 to 15 minutes.
Also, thank you so much. Also, Josh had talked to us about, giving free coffee, free water to the visitors. Should that include the volunteers too in the morning?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I would give my volunteers more than I gave the visitors. If you honor your volunteers, they will stick with you. Like my volunteers, I'd bring them in donuts and have them in a back room where just volunteers can have them, because I want them to know, man, they're invested the most in the ministry, so I want to invest the most in them.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So one little thing before we go eat lunch. When you go to Lowe's or you go to Walmart, what determines or who determines whether you have a great experience? The people that work there. It's going to be the cashier or the person who assisted you. It's not the CEO or the CFO. None of them have any impact on how your experience is. At your church, the pastor has a whole lot less to do with how good somebody's experience is, as opposed to the people who are actually volunteering in your lobby, in your parking lot, in your sanctuary, in your kids' area. Those are the folks that have all the impact. They're the ones that have all the interaction. So if I take care of my volunteers, they take care of the people that are visiting and the people that are coming through the doors. Learned it in business. I would take care of my employees took care of my customers.
How does the church attend those who are unable to go to the church?
Run that by me one more time.
How does the church attend those who are unable to go to the church?
Unable to come to the church? Such as shut-ins or something like that? Give me a little clearer definition.
The people that sick, the people, that sick,
okay.
The lady, the family that don't have the opportunity to go to the church. How is the church prepared to attend these people?
Okay. Me personally, I don't at all. And that may sound cold as a pastor, but I don't have time to go visit the sick and go into the hospitals. So it all happens through my teams. So if somebody's volunteering on my parking lot team and they get sick or somebody in their family dies, that team goes and ministers to them. They minister to each other. Now, what I know about it, maybe not. Sometimes I don't even know. Nobody even bothers to tell me when somebody died. Even though they're a volunteer at the church, maybe they had a relative die, I wouldn't even know about it. Because their ministry team took care of them and went and took food to the family. Now, somebody in the office may have sent flowers to them, but I may have never known about it. And it's not because I don't care. I just didn't know. Nobody told me. And you think, well, that's unheard of for a pastor. You just don't know. It's so many people you don't necessarily know. But they were ministered to and pastored and loved on by their teams that they were a part of. Now, if there's somebody else in the church who maybe just attends but is not on one of my teams, normally my connections director and her line of volunteers, her team takes care of that because they're the ones that have all the relationships, because they're the ones working the lobby, the parking lot, and the ushers. They know all the people. I don't. On a Sunday morning, I may only know 20% of the people in the building. That would be people walk. I walked in Sunday the other day. This is true story. Sunday, I'm walking in, and there's a guy in the lobby I'd never seen before. I'm like, hey, how are you doing today? And I never say, is this your first Sunday here? Because you get yourself in trouble. I always say, how long have you been attending Compassion, which is the name of our church? Because that way they can tell me. He said, oh, I've been coming 6 months. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, I've been volunteering for 3. That's awesome, man. I appreciate all you do. Never seen him before.
Yep. Self, when is the last time you did a funeral or a homegoing celebration?
I can't remember. I genuinely have no idea.
Well, what happens when someone transitioning at Compassion?
All right. If they are a part of, depending on where they are in the teams, now, is that my responsibility? Yes. If I'm asked to do it, will I do it? Absolutely, I will. Don't have a problem with that. I do a whole lot more weddings. Some of that has to do with the fact that the age of my congregation is like 35 is my average age. So I just don't have as many funerals. But often what happens is there's retired ministers in our congregation that fill those roles. So I encourage them to, because my schedule is so full, I encourage them to use one of our retired ministers. And one is it gives them a place to operate in their giftings, because that's what they do. They've done it for years. They want to do that and be a part, so they still feel important and connected. And the other thing is it takes it off my plate, and it gives them somebody who's actually has time to go sit with the family and minister to them instead of me running in, doing the funeral, and running out. So I will push that to some of the retired ministers in my congregation. I do have the added advantage of my father was a pastor for 30 years, and he's in my congregation. So I send a lot of stuff his way. He's not always happy about it, but I send him his way. It's genuinely because he's done that for years, and he's great at helping walk people through the end-of-life care, knowing how to get in touch with the funeral homes, that whole process. He's great with it, so I let him work in his giftings. I think I've probably got 4 retired ministers in my congregation, but between them, they do a lot of it. I pass most weddings off, too.
Seth, let me just say, too, as you get bigger, the bigger you get, the more you're going to have to shift the way you do ministry.
Yes.
Because there's no way you can minister. Listen, 736 people. All right, I need to visit each one of them. I want to take them out to dinner. So in 1 year, how many people could I take to dinner at 736?
And that's
there's only 300. How many days in a year?
365. And it's 736. That's on one Sunday. Well, the average person doesn't attend church every week these days. The average person attends once a month. So that's 736. We're actually ministering about 1,600 in a month that are actually considered regular attenders. They come every other Sunday or one Sunday a month. So I don't even know their names, much less be able to take them out to dinner.
So the shift has got to take place that we got to do ministry as a team. We have to develop people, equip the saints for the work of the ministry.
And that's all we're going to work on this afternoon. And you're absolutely right, Bishop. Dead on.
I like to say, Ricky and Seth, I understand that.
Yes, sir.
And the meeting has been a whole paradigm shift the way I've been taught to do ministry.
Right.
And so I might ask things. It's not that I'm trying to start trouble.
No.
I'm just trying to find the answer.
Look, we're walking this thing together.
Okay, what do you feel about church anniversary? Honestly.
We'll mention it from the pulpit like, hey, this is the 2nd year anniversary of us, and we'll keep moving.
But it could be a wave.
It could be a wave for you if you needed a fall wave, depending on where it fell. It could. You could use it for a big deal, but we don't, like pastor appreciation, I don't do that. It's not that I have anything wrong with it. It just doesn't fit into what I need to do, and I had to adjust to the fact people don't need to know me. Like, I don't have them knowing me and having a personal relationship with me doesn't change their eternity. Them having a relationship with Jesus does. And so I have to make sure they are connected and they're being ministered to, but them knowing me is not important at all. It doesn't change anything. So I'm the guy who speaks on Sunday morning. And people, but after service is over, I'll go stand in the back. Nobody wants to talk to me. Why? They got all these relationships with people they serve with and they do stuff with. They're not beating down the doors to come talk to me. You know how many church members I meet with during the week? None. They don't want to talk to me. The only people I meet with is my 4 directors, my top leadership team. That's it. And that's why I have time to be here. And tomorrow I fly to Atlanta. I'm teaching in Georgia tomorrow. And then next week I'm going to Maryland. It's just different. Now, I went from 14 people in my living room to this point, so we walked those stages. And so I know what you have to shift your thinking. You have to go from relational leader to where you're a visionary leader. You have to change the way you do some of that stuff. Here's the coolest part. A lot of people who were sitting listening to me are now actively doing ministry. They're living out their giftings. They're working in the fulfilled spot. What was holding them back? Me. As long as I felt like I needed to do it, I was holding them where they were. I was actually keeping them from multiplying the gifts God had given them. I was the one holding them back from using their talents. That's right. I was the lid. Once I got out of the way and let them start growing, man, they're ministering to a whole lot more people than I ever could have on my own. On my own, I could do 35. 35 was it. That's how horrible of a pastor I was. 35. All my efforts, all my energies, I was blood, sweat, and tears. That's all I could get was 35. Couldn't get above it. But once I started doing team ministry, now we're at this point, I've got more than 35 people who are ministering to others. The truth is I had to get out of the way and figure out I wasn't all I thought I was.
Pastor, nowadays a lot of people live lonely. How is your church, the ministry, the church, to attend these people lived lonely?
Lonely? It's actually a whole lot better than a single pastor because I could only maintain 40 relationships. That's psychologists tell us that an individual can only maintain 40 relationships. So a pastor and his wife could maintain about 80, which is why the average church in America is right at about 80, because that's all you can hold relationally. That's it. If you're highly functional relationally, you can go a little further than that. Most people are right around that range. Once I got to the point, I realized the relationships had to be passed down, where people don't need me, and I had to get over me needing to be needed. I had to get past the point I needed people to want my opinion and know what I had to say, to the point where they just needed somebody to love on them, and I pushed those relationships down. The truth is leadership's lonely. But why is it lonely? Because you're empowering everybody else. The greatest leaders are the ones who build a stage for someone else to stand on. The greatest leaders build a stage for someone else to stand on. My only objective is to help everybody that walks through my doors find their spot.
Hey, Seth, we're getting ready for lunch right now. Look, I heard a statement. I always heard that leadership is lonely, and I understand that because but leadership is only lonely if you go by yourself.
Absolutely.
So if you take some with you, come on now.
That's why I'm here.
Yes, that's right. That's
because
right.
the truth is what used to be my team at my church now functions pretty much without me. I give them vision and leadership.
Yeah.
I bring the word on Sunday. That's it. They function autonomously. So now I'm building other circles of relationships.
That's right. So all right, let's pray over lunch. Who's going to pray? Brother Alvin, you going to pray